Hello and welcome to Inside Spurs, sponsored by talkSPORT Bet. talkSPORT's dedicated Spurs show where we talk all things Tottenham Hotspur. My name's Sonny Snelling, looking after things this week, and I'm joined by two debutants on the show this episode. Spurs fan and content creator Barnaby Slater, and my talkSPORT colleague and good friend who's also a Spurs fan, of course, Jamie Carr. We'll start with Barnaby. How are you doing, mate?
Yes, mate, very happy after a good win last night and 2 wins in a row. I don't know what to do with myself.
I know, we are literally on cloud nine and Thomas Frank is here to stay. And Jamie, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. It's a different kind of feeling at the moment, winning. Not been used to that recently, so it's good to kind of get back on track with things.
And we have to clarify as well, home winning. Home winning. Tottenham are winning games at home. Read the headline. That's what it's all about. And obviously this episode comes on the back of wins against Slavia Prague in the Champions League. A 3-0 dominant display, I would say. And then also a 2-0 win in the Premier League over Brentford, where Thomas Frank faced his former side and obviously Keith Andrews, who he used to work with. So two results that we needed, especially after that Newcastle game where a lot of people thought, is the tide turning? Is Thomas Frank winning over the fans? But we'll start with you, Barnaby, then. Thomas Frank did say after the Brentford result that he wanted to build momentum. So do you think he is perfectly doing that, especially after last night's result?
I guess I can only talk about how it feels for me. I do feel like after the Brentford and the Slavia Prague games, like a lot more hopeful. I do feel like last night, especially in the Prague game, for the first time I saw him kind of adding those layers that he's spoken about so much, particularly in terms of Jed Spence coming in, playing a little more inverted, popping up in the 10 role sometimes. So that has impressed me. That's made me feel like there is some forward momentum coming. I don't agree with the people who felt really good after the Newcastle game, to be honest. I know it's 2 games ago now, so I shouldn't be negative, but I really felt like that was a smash and grab. We didn't deserve anything. And yes, I understand how players, sometimes their confidence gets raised by equalising in the last minute, and it was an overhead kick, but I really thought we were pretty much battered that game. But in terms of winning 2 in a row, especially I think the home game against Brentford, because the home form in the Premier League specifically has been so poor, that does cause, some positivity. But for me now going forward into the Premier League and with having 2 days extra rest over Nottingham Forest, I want to see whether we can then make it 2 in a row in the Premier League. And then really maybe that would lead to some genuine momentum amongst the fan base going into that Liverpool home game.
Yeah, and Jamie, asking a similar question to yourself. Do you feel like, Thomas Frank has come under a lot of stick and obviously what he said in the press about, being proper Spurs fans. Do you think he just needs to keep getting results to really win over the Spurs fan base as well?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of noise after those kind of comments, following the Fulham game, and it was all very negative. But I think I think what I did like is after the Newcastle game, he then kind of he was consistent with his views and then applauded the fans for the travelling fans that went to the Newcastle game and actually cheered for Vicario, and so I think I like that there's balance there. He does it both sides, and yeah, ultimately I think everyone just has to be patient. We know it takes time. It's a process. And now what we're starting to see is like some of the wins that we're getting, they're not just kind of, a win against Leeds where we managed to kind of scrape a result and get a win. It's actually like slightly more convincing. You can see we're making chances now, and I think ultimately that'll keep the fans on board.
Yeah, I think when I was looking at the stats last night, a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's only Brentford, it's only Slavia Prague," but last night it was, a bit better possession, a bit more like getting your foot on the ball and confidence, and instead of having 4 shots, 1 on target, we had a shot on target in the first shot on target was in the 36th second, and I think we had 14 shots, 11 on target, so it's a bit better numbers. But as I say, this is Slavia Prague. We need to know the level, but it's the Champions League, so we can, get a little bit of momentum. And I just want to ask you guys as well about Romero. A lot of talk about him at the moment. Again, I know, 2 penalty goals and an own goal, but he did well from that corner, sort of forcing the issue for the own goal. I'll go back to you, Barnaby. Do you think now people are realising what sort of player Christian Romero is? Like, is he ranking as one of the Premier League's best, one of the best defenders in the world, do you think? Or are you happy that sort of people still refer him as maybe the rash defender because it means he might not go to Real Madrid or an Atletico Madrid?
Yeah, before I get on to Romero, I just want to say I don't think Slavia Prague were brilliant last night, but they had drawn with Atalanta, who then beat
Yeah.
Chelsea last night. So they're not whipping boys by any means, and I thought they were pretty decent in terms of their man-to-man press on us. Going on to Christian Romero. The only thing that frustrates me about Christian Romero is that over his Spurs career, he's just picked up far too many injuries and misses games. For me, if he can stay fit for the entire season, then we will, as a result, I think, be challenging for that top four. Because when he's in the team, when he's leading, he's absolutely second to none as far as I'm concerned. And that partnership with Mickey van der Ven, in terms of the balance that it brings, unbelievable. And yesterday I thought was a perfect example of everything good that Romero brings. Not just the flick on for the goal, which was really important, of course, but also just him putting his foot on the ball, trying to draw the press and waiting for those between line passes. I saw somebody tweet, I can't remember who it is, unfortunately, so apologies for plagiarism here, but someone tweeting, I think it might have been Lily White Lab, actually, Kish from Lily White Lab, who's brilliant. Make sure you follow him. But he was saying there is, he was showing a bit of footage from last night with Romero with his foot on the ball, goading the attackers to try and come and get him, and then how he found that between the lines ball and just saying how he is the best in the world at that. And I completely agree. And in terms of you saying about, potentially Romero moving down the line, I don't know whether he persuaded Vinay and then Daniel Levy back in the day when he signed that new contract to put some kind of release clause in it. But I think Romero really signed up on the knowledge that I think he was probably told, you'll be the next captain of the club, take us forward, grab this club by the scruff of the neck the way you do with Argentina, and get us to more trophies, more titles, and pushing for the Premier League title, for the Champions League down the road. And I get the feeling with someone like Christian Romero that he's a big personality player and he likes those kind of challenges. And, he's won pretty much everything he's gone for in terms of, if you think about the World Cup, the Copa America, the Super, whatever that is, Super Lissima or whatever that was, and the Europa League. So I think there's kind of no end to where Christian Romero can take us if he stays fit and if the club, of course, back him the way he deserves to be backed.
Yeah, and Jamie, do you think, like, with Romero now, obviously getting that captain's armband, maybe actually in the Thomas Frank system looking stronger because, it's a bit more like flat defending. He hasn't, got to play on that halfway line. How do you see him in this Spurs side? Because, going into the next game in the Champions League, Van der Ven will be suspended because he's accumulated too many yellow cards. But do you think now, is Romero the bigger miss of the two? Or is it, Van der Ven still a massive miss, obviously?
It's a good question, to be fair, because I think for a while I think Van der Ven is the one that if you take him out, we'll really suffer. But I suppose Christian Romero, his leadership that he brings, and I guess it's a bit like, with Liverpool, if you have Van Dijk, you put someone alongside him, you can kind of talk him through the game. I think you probably have that when you play Romero and you've got Danzo, you've got Van der Ven. You could probably, so in that sense, Romero is possibly more important. I think you mentioned as well about like him having this kind of rash reputation, which I'll call people out for occasionally because I know he's got like, I can't remember his last red card. All I can think of off the top of my head is
2023 was his last red card. That's when I heard someone say the other day on a piece of content. Yeah, Chelsea game where he got sent off. Obviously, it was a very rash tackle, but yeah, that was his last red card.
It was. Yeah, I mean, I even thought he did actually get the ball. It's just where the follow through afterwards. But for me, it's more, everyone's like, oh, he always gets red cards, he's rash. It's actually just the yellow cards that he gets. And I think, and I know he's about to, I think he's near a yellow card away from a suspension. But I think the point is that he's not as rash as I think people make him out to be. And they always use that as like his downfall. And so I think, like you said, if we can hold on to him for longer for that reason, that's great. I think what's weird about Tottenham is that most people, even though we're in the position we're in, probably wouldn't change the defence that much. You'd say, oh, would you try and improve it anyway? You wouldn't change the two starting centre-backs. So I think we're in a good position there, and it's just about kind of getting consistency across the board with the whole team. And I think it'll be very beneficial for us to keep Romero, especially as the captain. I think that's kind of given him a boost this season.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, we talk about rashness. I like to call it aggression, but like you can use aggression it's a good attribute for a player to have, especially like winning the ball, fighting. I mean, in that Newcastle game, basically taking the game by the scruff of the neck. So yeah, really happy with him. I mean, he could have got sent off against Brentford maybe, but we won't talk about that. We'll talk about two of the stars from last night, and I'll split it so each of you get to talk about one of them individually. One of them that we have to mention is Xavi Simons, who looks like he might have turned a corner. Another Champions League man of the match. A great display against Brentford as well at the weekend. And I want to just read out a quick stat that all 8 of Tottenham's wins in all competitions since Xavi Simons signed have been with him in the starting 11. So it goes to show that if you play a 10 in the 10, we might create stuff and we might win games. So I'll get you to talk about Xavi Simons, Barnaby. What are you making of him? And do you think he can be that, starting 10 going forward for Spurs in the future?
Yeah, just to play devil's advocate a little bit on that stat, I think we have to remember that Thomas Frank didn't really pick him for any of the really difficult games. So as a result, maybe that stat is a little bit, on his side. But yes, I would agree with you. And in that he's definitely showing something now. I think it's important to remember how long it took Luka Modric to settle into the Premier League after coming from abroad. And, I think a lot of people now look at Luka Modric as potentially one of the greatest footballers ever to play the game. And even he couldn't acclimatise to the Premier League very quickly. So for Xavi Simons to take a while to acclimatise, I don't think is a huge surprise. I saw it from his first game. There's definitely a player there. We know there's a player now there, but I think the key point is something that Thomas Frank said in his, I think it was the pre-Brentford press conference, where he said Xavi Simons has been training really well and he's been in the gym. And I think that's the key point. I think we all realise it's the physicality that he wasn't used to, the amount of times he's being knocked off the ball, both at pace but also not at pace, where he's expecting fouls to be given by referees that maybe are being given in the Bundesliga. And he's realised that actually not only does he have to time his runs a little better to get ahead of the shoulder barge, but also be a little stronger from work in the gym as well. And realise that he's got to kind of grow himself physically to really make a difference in midfield in the Premier League. And I think we're seeing just little green shoots of that. Clearly, it's never been in doubt, I don't think. When you get him on the ball, in the pocket, he's going to take it on the half turn, something that not many of our players can or are willing to do. And also he's shown me in the last couple of games just that he's a bit quicker than I thought he was. He's able to get away once he gets separation. He's able to get away from his opposition far quicker than I thought. And that's not just that Brentford goal where he ran half the length of the pitch, but also last night and the Brentford game, he won a few fouls that I thought, they've really come because the opposition player wasn't expecting him to get a yard or two ahead of him at that point and nick the ball ahead of them. So he's a very impressive player. I've actually literally just sent a WhatsApp this morning to my best friend who has been slagging Xavi Simons off for the last 2 months. And I don't know if you saw, but in the mix zone after the game yesterday, Xavi Simons was wearing what I can best describe as a garish kind of head cover thing, kind of electric blue. And I texted my best mate and said, can we agree that if Xavi Simons scores 10 Premier League goals this season, he's got 1, hasn't he now? That you will have to wear one of those. My best mate will have to wear one on a night out of my choice. I'm waiting for him to agree, but I think that's a fair bet because I think he will score 10 Premier League goals.
Yeah, you've got to send me a picture of this headgear. I might get myself one. And also, it's good to hear a Spurs player in the mix zone not causing trouble like maybe a Liverpool player did at the weekend. But yeah, I've been impressed with Xavi Simons. You're saying there about him toughening up. His lily white kit last night was covered head to toe in mud. He was really getting involved and winning those tackles. And just, I think I said it on a video with yourself, Barnaby, on our channels a month or so ago, saying that Xavi has come in a bit, under the cosh with the injuries of Maddison. Obviously, Maddison praising him on Sky Sports' Monday Night Football was really good to see. And obviously, Dejan Kulusevski. So it is sort of all on him to be a bit creative. But Jamie, now turning to you, the other star performer this season, you could say, probably one of our stronger players, has been Mohamed Kudus. Got a goal last night, a penalty. Obviously, we were able, and I sent you the video, the picture on Slack this morning of them all sitting on the stools, and finally we've got him sitting on the stool at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in a positive mind frame. So, what have you made of his start to life at Spurs? Is he, he came in again, like a lot of West Ham fans saying, you don't know what player you're getting in Kudus, he's inconsistent. But do you think we are seeing a player who had that potential that we maybe saw more at Ajax?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I absolutely love Kudus. He's been definitely one of the highlights of our season so far, one of the standout players. I think a lot of West Ham fans were trying to deflect it when they sold him, and they were saying, like when it wasn't going well for them. He had a poor season last season, but I think you could see all the potential there in the year before. He got numerous goals, had an unreal goal catalogue as well, and at Ajax, of course. And he's just a good flair, flashy, direct winger, which I think is kind of. I was thinking about it last night. Like he's kind of just the Tottenham player that fans love. Like, you know, there's the classic players that Tottenham fans love. He is one of those, I think. You know, he's got a little bit about him. I mean, you see the way he'll like take the ball down from like a switchfield pass, and like the skills he does. I mean, kick-ups in his own half outside the box is a bit of a push, but you know, it's still that's what makes him him, I think. But yeah, I think it's been a great start so far. His numbers are starting to come in now. I'm glad he got his goal last night. I was gutted he got subbed off at the end of the game before because I thought he was, you know, a minute away from scoring. You could see it coming. And yeah, I think there's so much more to come from him. If he starts really getting those numbers in, I think he could be the player of the season for us.
100%. And, you know, moving now to Thomas Frank, a lot of people saying that he fixed maybe one issue at Spurs so far with the defence, but a lot of people questioning his attack. But last night, Spurs recorded an expected goal value of over 2xG for just the fourth time this season. Obviously, there were 2 penalties, so it does skew it slightly. But do you think now, you know, after how maybe more front-footed we were against Brentford and Slavia Prague, especially at home, because, you know, I think back to the Wolves game where we were playing João Palhinha and Bentancur in the double pivot. Are you, I'll go back to you, Barnaby, are you now thinking that Thomas Frank knows that he has to, you know, really take that handbrake off when we're playing certain teams? Because even last night, I thought probably João Palhinha was one of the worst players in the team. So, you know, the likes of Lucas Bergvall, Papa Matsar and Archie Gray, I think it's been incredible last 2 games. Those are more the midfielders we'd like to see, especially in these games where teams are going to sit back.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit nervous actually going into the Forest game on Sunday because I think those of us, you know, the fans and content creators, those of us who talk about it a lot, I think we've all kind of realised now that it should be and kind of has to be Palhinha or Bentancur, Bergvall or Gray, and then Simons ideally in the 10. But I'm slightly nervous that he might go to Forest and be like, it's worked out quite well in the Premier League so far away at the likes of Leeds and West Ham where we've played Bentancur and Palhinha, so maybe I'll go back to that, and I really hope he doesn't, especially like I mentioned earlier, with Forest having 2 days less rest because of their game. I think they've got Utrecht tomorrow night in the Europa League. I think we should expect that Forest will want us to have all the ball, and as a result we need to play Xavi Simons in the 10, and I would go back to Bentancur and I'd play Archie Gray. And I want to talk a little bit about Archie Gray because I think he is now really showing me that he could be the proper balance in that midfield in terms of that kind of number 8 you can get up and down. That's not to say I don't think Lucas Bergvall or Pat Matsar are great. Obviously, Sar's going off to the AFCON, so he'll be out for a month or so. But I think he is just a very smart kind of glue that works really well between either Bentancur and Palhinha and Xavi Simons, getting up and down. Last night he had a shot. I don't think I'd ever seen him have a shot, which I think hit his own man. But he actually got into a position where he did a little shape onto his left foot and then had a shot, which was great to see. And as he gets more confident, I think Archie Gray could become, this is a bit of a risk saying this, but I think he could become our most important player this season in terms of gluing together that midfield that Thomas Frank has really been struggling with. So I'm hopeful that Frank kind of goes against what I think will be his kind of pragmatic tendencies on Sunday and say, actually, no, I need players in that midfield who are going to knock the ball around, because I think Forest, under old Sean Dyche, they'll just try and low block it. And also, that Forest atmosphere, I think, will be quite heated on Sunday as well. So we're going to have to do something on the ball to quieten them down, ideally as early as possible. But I think Frank will be tempted to go back to the double pivot, but I really hope he doesn't.
You've just reminded me, I will obviously preview the Forest game towards the end of the video, but yeah, all the Morgan Gibbs White saga. I can imagine the chance, and it's going to be a fiery affair. Yeah, and Jamie, do you think now, like, Frank is, the way I've seen it as well, sort of knowing his best players in certain positions? He knows Kudus on the right. He knows maybe, you know, Richarlison for certain games. Are you seeing a bit more of, the way I'd put it, is Thomas Frank actually putting his stamp on it? Because both the results felt like, you know, how I imagined watching Brentford last season.
Yeah, he's putting his stamp on it a little bit more. I think nobody can lock down that left wing position, which I've been saying for the last few weeks. Like, it's kind of roulette when you're looking to see who's playing there every week. It could be one of 5 or 6 players, which is kind of ridiculous. So I think to have like a front three just set in stone would be nice. But otherwise, yeah, I think you know, it's slowly starting to show, because I think you have the balance of the kind of defensive solidity, and then if we can balance that with, you know, the goals as well, that'll be perfect. I mean, you saw at Brentford, I thought Brentford, you know, when everything's clicking, they had a front four: Damsgaard, Schade, Mbumo, Wissa, and they would all contribute, and they were good to watch, and they would get goals. And I think, like I've said, with time, the chemistry will hopefully shine through with Simmons and Kudus, etc. That's why I kind of want that left wing to be kind of, someone needs to get that position sorted. And yeah, hopefully with time we can kind of, that's like the last piece of the puzzle, to kind of see Frank's kind of style properly imposed for me, I think.
And I want
Antoine
to stick
Semenyo then.
Yeah, literally, I've been saying
get...
Semenyo.
Oh, he is literally the final piece of the jigsaw puzzle. We're going to actually talk about transfers as well at the end, so that's a perfect. Save Barnaby, save that chat for the end. That's all I'll say on that. I want to actually stick on Archie Gray because Barnaby made some really good points there, and I've been, since the PSG game, I feel like in that game, I know we lost 5-3, but he was really, really key. My one worry about Archie Gray is we have got an injury to Destiny Udogie until January or so. I can see him shoehorning him sometimes at left back. But sticking with you, Jamie, do we just need to see more of Archie Gray in midfield? He's obviously, he's quite different because Bergvall is maybe more of a progressor. He's got more of that legs. But what I see in Gray is just that sort of technical ability and the passer that I've moaned on here for weeks about the only good passer I've seen in Spurs recently has been Christian Romero from the back. But do you think he is a perfect midfielder to thread the balls through into our attack and, create even more chances?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all know there's a player there. I think last season, we thought he was fantastic coming in. My criticism of him was whenever I saw him get played in midfield last season, I didn't think he was quite as up to it or as impressive as he was at centre back. This season, you're starting to see it. He's more comfortable in there. I think that's probably just come with age. I hate to throw my friend under the bus, but when we first signed him, I had a mate who told me that it's an unbelievable signing, and he is Xavi, Iniesta, and Busquets rolled into one. That is how he described him. So I'm starting to see it a little bit now, but that would be very exciting if we can get that with the future. And I think we're starting to see that. I kind of see Tottenham's midfield kind of broken up into a few parts. I think you've got like your Polinia and your Bentancur, kind of a bit more of a protector of the back four, and then you've kind of got Bergvall and Gray and maybe Sarr that kind of need to bring the energy, and then you've got your Simmons and your Madisons, the attacking kind of more forward-thinking players. I think every game now you need to have at least Gray or Bergvall in. They just bring an energy that I really like, and the fact that Gray is now contributing a bit more going forward with his passing is going to be really important for us.
Yeah, you mentioned all those Barcelona legends there as well. Maybe he's like Sergi Roberto because he can play at right back and left back. But yeah, I think, I had a lot of conversations of this season being like, why did we pay 40 million for this guy? We're not even seeing him. He's, but then you have to sit back and go, Frank literally wanted this guy at Brentford. So he must, have him in his plans. Barnaby, do you still think, you mentioned you were singing highly of Gray just before there, but do you think this is the guy who maybe looks like more set to start over maybe a Bergvall or a Sarr?
Yeah, I do at the moment. I think he's, it's that thing. He's got the shirt and someone's got to come and take it off him. And I think he's playing well enough to keep it. I've always said this about Archie Gray. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And this is one for the older viewers, but he could be like the next Gary Mabbott. Gary Mabbott was a player who came into Spurs back in the early 80s from Bristol Rovers, I think. And he came in as a midfielder and then he became one of our greatest centre-backs for years and years. And I think Archie Gray, from what he's shown me at centre-back, might, as he gets older, much older, become a centre-half. Because when he's got the game all in front of him, he's got that kind of Romero-esque skill on the ball, I think, to find defence-splitting passes. But at the moment, his work in central midfield is definitely doing enough for me. It's really impressing in terms of, just like I said, in terms of linking those three different types of midfielder together. And that's what I think Thomas Frank has been struggling with. So it would be a huge surprise to me if going to Forest on Sunday and then Liverpool the following week, if he chose to change it up. He is a bit of a tinker man, Thomas Frank. He does love to rotate. But like I said, I think with us, we should be, for the first time, really, for me, less fatigued than the opposition that we're playing. We've had to suffer with that a lot. I think that Fulham game and the Man United game as well, especially in the first half, really showed how when you're kind of 5% more fatigued, 5-10% more fatigued, it makes a huge difference. So I'm really hoping that'll happen for Forest against us, in that they'll be more fatigued. And I think Archie Gray, with his legs, can really push around that central midfield of theirs.
Yeah, and finally, to round up this section, then that leaves that result against Slavia Prague leaves Spurs just outside of the top 8 due to Liverpool's last-minute controversial penalty. We've got Dortmund to play and Eintracht Frankfurt. We know both those sides pretty well. We seem to play Dortmund in the Champions League every time we're in it, and Frankfurt we know from last season. Going back to you, Barnaby, are you confident we can automatically go through to the next round, or can you see us playing in that extra playoff game?
Yeah, I think we'll probably be in the punishment round, realistically. Look, if we manage to turn over Dortmund and Frankfurt, then we absolutely deserve to be in the top 8. That would constitute an unbelievable group phase as far as I'm concerned, and Thomas Frank would rightly get all the flowers for that. But I don't think so. I don't think it's likely we're going to win both of those games. It's Dortmund. It's weird because I thought Dortmund was at home. Is that right? Dortmund at home next? I'm
pretty sure. Let me just double check that. I feel like, yeah, Eintracht, because I remember seeing Eintracht Frankfurt away. Yeah. Because, I was thinking, why are we going there again? We literally went there last year. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure Dortmund are at home as well.
One thing I would say is, if we could get that win against Dortmund, and I'm not sure we will, I think that might be more difficult. We think Dortmund have had a decent start, especially in the Champions League. But if we did get that win at home to Dortmund, if we could make that a real atmosphere at the stadium and a really huge game and turn them over, then it does almost feel like that Frankfurt game would be a little bit of a free hit, because nobody, I don't think, would have expected us to get in that top 8, and kind of in the knowledge that if we do win there, then we could do. And also last season when we were abject, we went to Frankfurt and played really well. So we have the memory, we have the previous there. So it could happen, but I'm expecting probably at least one draw.
Yeah, I feel like Dortmund, the fixture of it being at our stadium, I'm more confident with. But then, as we saw last year against Frankfurt, it is a tricky away game. And even looking at Dortmund's front three, you got Guirassy, Adeyemi, Julian Brandt still there, pulling strings. Jamie, are you confident? I feel like 4 points might get us over the line.
Yeah, I mean, it is tricky because thinking about it, to get in that top 8, we're going to have to get a result from both. And if I broke it down game by game, I do think we could. But I don't know, it just seems a bit unrealistic to look at those 2 games and go, 6 points. I think Frankfurt, we went there and we did do it before. I think that'll give them confidence. They don't have Ekitike this time. Dortmund, a tricky one. I think it would have been much worse at their ground. So it's kind of hard to judge. I think 4 points. I mean, what are we on? 11? 15? I'd have to check the table last year, but that could scrape us in 15 points. I'd say I think we can definitely get a result from one, but both I'm not so sure.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but I think if I remember rightly, people were saying that 16 will pretty much guarantee you top 8. 15 might be a bit tight.
Oh, well, there's the mathematician on it. It's got to, but this is what it's all about. You've got to get results at the top level. And even when you look at it, a lot of people say, as long as you win your home games and draw your away games, you'll be all right. Obviously, we lost against PSG, but, draws against Bodo Glimt where we were not, firing on all cylinders. Maybe those results might come back to bite us. But yeah, it'll be interesting. And, this is what it is all about at this top level in the Champions League, playing tough top opposition. And getting results. But you're watching Inside Spurs with our partners, talkSPORT Bet. Don't forget, new customers get an exclusive offer of £40 in free bets when you bet £10. Go to talksportbet.com/Inside Spurs to claim this offer now. And we're talking about now the atmosphere, because last night there was going to be plenty of smiles because Heung-Min Son returned to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I'll be honest, I was getting quite emotional, especially, I don't know if you guys saw the mural as well outside the stadium. Looks absolutely pucker. The club do those things really well, I will say that. So there is a bit of a good feel factor coming back to the club, hopefully. But underneath that, there's a lot of unrest with some fans around issues like ticket prices. But let's see what Simon Jordan had to say on talkSPORT about this earlier.
They can't seem to be able to fill their stadium. Supporters voted with their feet again last night. Fewer than 48,000 turned up to see Slavia Prague. And that comes amidst recent complaints from fans that they, Simon, are being priced out. So they're right to do this, I think, because they feel, no, hang on. Even though last night's game was downgraded to a Category C, where tickets would come in between 38 quid and 80, Many of them are still saying, no, it's too much. Last month, the Spurs Supporters Trust, over the past couple of seasons, it's undeniable that the atmosphere has declined at the stadium. Too many empty seats, too many fans, particularly young fans, priced out of attending. They're not having it.
Well, the team finished 17th in the league last year, so it's not surprising that there was a poor atmosphere inside the stadium. They don't win games at home.
They won a European trophy.
Not at home, they didn't. So the point is, we're talking about.
You think they'd show up?
But again, first and foremost, I don't know what we're comparing it to in terms of their performance in previous Champions League games. If we take the statistic, there's 60,000 seater stadium that's only got 48,000 in it. I don't know whether in previous Champions League qualifying games against lesser opposition, whether we've seen lesser attendances. So I don't know whether it's a recent phenomenon. Whatever you charge fans for football, they will tell you that they want to pay less. That's the nature of the beast.
They didn't last season because they make the point, the Supporters Trust.
They did.
Europa League nights last season with sensibly priced tickets proved the point.
Yeah.
Fair ticket pricing fills the ground, often with the next generation of Spurs fans. So last season they got it right, this season they're not.
I'm fascinated to see, because I always like these examples from these people that have run big businesses and run football clubs and know how to do it, when they're telling other people how to do it. There's obviously a view that Tottenham will have, and maybe they've got it wrong in this instance, that Champions League pricing is different from Europa League pricing. I imagine Europa League pricing is different from European Conference pricing. So you're not comparing apples with apples, are you, for starts? Because you're playing in the elite competition in European football, so it comes with a premium.
So as an owner, you would think you've got a cheap bringing this up.
No, I don't think you've got a cheap bringing.
No, you've got to run a big business to be able to talk about a matter like this.
I think with authority. I think
with authority.
I think you can have an opinion. You can have some expertise based upon some experiences you may have. But I always find it amusing when people start telling people that really do know how to run things that this is the way to do it. Now, the case in point may well be that in this instance they're right, and it may well be a fair comparison. I don't know, but comparing the Europa League pricing policy to the Champions League policy is probably a flawed position.
But the evidence is there, Simon. They didn't show up last night in Europe.
So I've got friends with Tottenham fans, and they're constantly whinging about the prices being high. I think it is one of the higher stadiums to go to. We know that. The reality is, if they're winning 90% of the games at home, the
people go there.
Stadium will be full.
That's my point.
So it's chicken and egg, really. Which one is it? Are they going to keep losing at home and be able to fill that stadium? Whatever the price
they're going to argue about concession pricing because it's a tried and trusted position that concession pricing is seen to be something that's valuable to certain people. The concession pricing for older people has been changed because the retirement age has changed. So why would you be given a concession price to somebody that's in full-time work at 60 years of age? That's the argument of football clubs. They also attach lesser value to the value of being spent inside a stadium. Now, you might not like these arguments, but they're commercial reality. And whether we like it or not, football clubs are trying to be run as businesses because they don't have the business premise, because everything goes to the players. 90% of the cost implications of football go to the players. The one exception is this football club because they've got a very low ratio to turnover. But notwithstanding that, these football clubs aren't making huge amounts of money, and they can say, get your house in order, run it properly. Well, the market doesn't allow people to do that because the market pricing for players and wages is out of control. And until you're going to control that, and you can't control that because up pops the unions with their little two-penneth about you can't have squad cap, you can't have this, you can't have the other. So the tragedy is that people get to pay it when they pay the broadcasters 120 quid a month to watch football. They get to pay it when it comes in the stadium. This is the cost of football. Now, the argument is, would they get more if they had lowered their prices? I don't know. If they won more games at home, as Danny says, there probably would be more interest in people coming to the stadium. And of course, a lot of the people that come in the Premier League season have bought season tickets, and the Champions League pricing will be excluded from season tickets.
But you see, I like the wording of the Spurs Trust statement, Simon, because many of the fans want to go, but feel, it's too heavy a price to go. The statement, the Trust said, the Champions League, our flagship nights, has seen thousands of empty seats, in our view, due to unrealistic, unaffordable match pricing. A world-class stadium without a full house is only half a home.
Do you know what?
They're hurt at what's happening.
I get it, but sorry, just one thing. I do think when you look at fixtures, whether you're somebody who's watching the game, they haven't had the big names there. They haven't had Real Madrid there or Barcelona there, have they?
Yeah.
They'll be full then. So it's a little bit of that. The pricing is relevant. I'm not saying it isn't, because I just told you I've got a lot of people whinging about the prices of Tottenham who I know want to go to games. So I agree. But it is also to do with the opposition. Now, it's different at Liverpool and Man U. They're full all the time because they've got bigger fan base, what people coming in from.
They've got bigger achievements as well.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things. But I do think it would have been cute and a bit more clever of them to think, well, is this an enticing fixture? No.
Yeah.
So let's do something different with the price and get people in.
Spurs will say they have done by reducing it to a Category C game. And what we're saying is that Category C pricing doesn't meet the requirements of the fans.
Yeah.
Category B pricing definitely wouldn't, and Category A. So it's not a case of Spurs haven't acknowledged the existence of a lesser game. They have done, but the pricing policy within Category C
maybe
is still
learn
not
from
deemed
it
to be.
so you can fill it
with
next
due respect
time.
to this organisation, which is their job to represent the people that they're supposedly representing, which is the fans. These are the same people that wrote a manifesto of what they thought the club should do in terms of their demands of the ownership. And I remember that. It's this little, Magna Carta of demands upon the football club. It's their job to keep the club honest. And by that, I mean not honest in terms of corruption, keeping them focused on doing what's right for everybody
In
concerned.
this instance, they're right to voice their concern, are they not?
Well, the only way...
They're surely right to voice their concern.
They are if you're regularly
It's
getting...
too
if
expensive.
If you're regularly getting a big champion on Champions League
12,000
evenings,
people, not for 48. So on the bulk of it, so if you'd have reduced the ticket price down by 50% to get the rest of the people in, then the 48,000 that would have got a lesser ticket, you'd have got less revenue.
But surely on a big European night like last night, you want to sell out your stadium.
Well, in an ideal world, but Man City often don't. And no one makes a big song and dance about that. It's about winning football matches. And winning
They
football
do.
matches...
They call it the empty had.
Because the people like to have a go at Man City because they've got more money than God. That's why they do it, right? Because any way you can dig at people, you dig at them. But it doesn't affect the outcome of the football match to some extent. If Tottenham are winning games, like Man City were winning games, you'd achieve more in the stands. But again, I make the point, unless you can actually empirically prove to me that you'd have sold another 12,000 tickets if you reduced those pricing, then you can't make your argument. What they're doing is saying that we would have filled the stadium. You can have no knowledge of that.
No, but it's logic, isn't it?
Well,
It's logical to think.
If you had the Tottenham hierarchy, though, Simon, this morning,
Well,
you'd think, I'm not bothered about that. We couldn't fill the
discounted the other
stadium.
tickets. So you'd have discounted the tickets to get the other 12,000 in by discounting the other 48,000.
Then wouldn't it be fair to say it's an ongoing thing where they're analysing all the time and can
Well,
adjust?
Spurs will obviously think that they are. And they obviously would have thought to themselves that a Category C game should attract an audience. And what
At
they're
that
saying is
price.
that Category C pricing is not good enough.
No,
So to pay 30
Simon, you're missing the point. It's not just last night. It's all the Champions League games they can't sell out. All of them.
I don't know what the attendances are.
Spurs are in the Champions League because they won the Europa League. It's a great achievement. They haven't sold out one game in the Champions
And they
League
will-
yet.
and again-
in this wonderful state-of-the-art stadium.
Well, let's make the argument then. Is it absolutely imperative to have a full stadium, or is it imperative to make the maximum revenue you can from the people that are prepared to go?
Why would it not be imperative to have a full house?
Well, I'll give you an example then. So if you get 60,000 tickets at 20 quid, or would you rather have 48,000 tickets at 50 quid? Which gives you more revenue?
What's the better look? A stadium
It
that's
depends
full.
what I'm making the bleeding look for. I want to win football matches.
Because we constantly go on about the empty had. Look, empty
I don't.
seats there, empty seats
I don't.
there. City are slotted for it.
But that's up to other people. The argument that I'm advancing is in an ideal world, you price it at a point that can make everybody happy. I can tell you categorically, without any fear or favour of this argument, that whatever pricing policy you put in favour, the fans would have something to say about it.
They've played no one decent at home.
Well, I don't think they've paid anyone a
But
substance.
regardless of
Villarreal,
that, their home is
Copenhagen.
Their home is the state-of-the-art stadium, 60,000 capacity, and they can't fill it. You're not bothered by that. If you're in the Spurs hierarchy this morning, nah, it's fine.
But they can't-
What was it?
he does it, but
48,000?
Jim,
All right.
Simon's point is fair because what he's talking about when he's giving the numbers of more money for less people, the ones who are prepared to pay.
Yeah.
That's football now, isn't it? It's business.
Tragically, that's why concessions are being run out the door, because ultimately it should be a reward. If you've been supporting your football club for 25 years, 30 years, 40 years, however long you've been supporting it, you should be looking forward to some loyalty repayments if you go to concession levels. But people are looking at it going, right, if I'm a 60-year-old person and I'm still working, the football club are going, the retirement age in this country has changed since concessions were introduced. Why shouldn't we up the concession to 65? And people are going, that's outrageous. But it's the commercial world. Oh, by the way, get me the best football stadium, get me the best players, get rid of this manager, get me the best facilities, but don't ask me to pay for it.
So, Jamie, I actually was having my lunch break, so actually missed the clip when it went out live, but came back to my Slack message of you being quite irate about this, so I'm just going to let you take the floor.
Yeah, I wasn't too happy about this because I think Simon had just gone into this this section with he just had an owner's mindset on, and I just didn't like the way he approached it. I felt like there was no he wasn't approaching it as a fan and as someone that would go and buy tickets. As someone that has bought tickets literally yesterday for the Dortmund game in January, I can tell you it was tough trying to buy that ticket just because I had to bring myself to pay £96 per ticket. And I mean, I don't know about you, but it never used to be like this. I know inflation's a thing, but I used to pay 60 quid for that ticket. But when you're nearing £100, you have to bite your tongue a little bit when you do it. It's tough. I think I actually looked at the Newcastle game as well, which I think is in February, and that's Category A. and that was £106. And so I kind of, I just wrote that off straight away. I mean, these are on the upper tier as well. I just wrote that off. I was like, I can't bring myself to do it. Let me look at the Dortmund game because that's category B somehow. And that was a little bit less, but £96. I've only done it because it's a Christmas present, and I thought it'd be really nice, but otherwise, like, you can't justify that. And I didn't like that Simon, he kind of had this approach of, if the club want nice things like a nice stadium, the best facilities, and top players to be paid for, he was kind of saying that it needs to be paid for through these tickets. But we've been able to build and grow over the years without having to do that. And I mean, also the stadium is a point in itself. We had 36,000 capacity before. We've basically doubled it. That's going to be another, that I think is more than enough compared to what we used to have back in the day as a way of being able to still provide good players and all the other things that come with it. So yeah, it touched a nerve. I didn't like the way they approached it this morning.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, mate. Like, when you look at we earn the second most money, I think, behind Manchester United through like match day, like revenue. So obviously that counts as like food, drink, beverages, programs, all that sort of stuff. And I know I said this point I think I said it on an Inside Spurs episode, I said it on my own channel. My good friend Joe Tomlinson tweeted it. We've got a friend who is a Spurs season ticket holder, and before the Fulham game, we had 3 wins in 21 league games. And with his season ticket, I think it's like £2,000 a year. Each win was around the £766 mark. So when you work out like that, when we're paying for games where we're hardly seeing any wins under Ange Postecoglou, it became a bit of dross at the beginning of Thomas Frank. Hopefully we're beyond that now. People are going to get fed up. It's like you don't go to the theatre and like leave being like disgruntled. A lot of hardworking people put a lot of money into football, and yeah, maybe some people might say Simon Jordan's a little bit out of touch because he's coming from the owner's point of view. I'll bring Barnaby into the conversation as well. Obviously, Barnaby, I don't know how many games you get to, obviously, with doing your content as well, but do you just think it's a massive rip-off, up and down the football pyramid, or do you think Spurs have still got that, they're like, well, we've got to pay the stadium off somehow?
Well, first of all, absolutely shocked to hear that Simon Jordan was being controversial. Can't believe that. But it's difficult. I got a season ticket at the new stadium first year as one of the 1882 season ticket holders, which is the club they started with the most expensive season ticket in the country, where you could sit in the middle of the south stand, the one-tier wall. But I was so far down the season ticket waiting list, that was the only way I could get it. And one thing I would say is that back then, I think it was 2,300 quid. I think it's more now, I'm sure. But back then, I was happy to pay that on the basis that, we were in the Champions League every year. Under Poch, we'd nearly won the league a couple of times. The on-pitch stuff was relevant, I felt, to the amount of money I was willing to pay for it. The issue Spurs have, and have had for the last 5-6 years, is the on-pitch performance has not justified the amount of money that the tickets are being priced at. And it's part of the Americanization of sport, isn't it? The way Daniel Levy, I think, used to talk about it openly, where he'd say, oh, well, do you see what they have to pay to go into an NFL game in America? It's like, yeah, but that shouldn't be your argument for putting the prices up. It should be quite as simple as, if the entertainment is there for the fans, I think they will be willing to pay that price. But if it's not, I think there has to be a sliding scale where the club have to be like, well, fair enough. We haven't done much, and we have to allow for that. But obviously that's not business. That's not capitalism. That's unlikely to happen. And the reality is, I feel like the stadium has been a little bit of a double-edged sword in that, yeah, as you rightly said, Jamie, there are double the amount of tickets to be sold, but also as a result, it's very easy to get tourists in there, people who are just in London for the weekend, people who are just trying to see any football match rather than specifically a Tottenham football match, sorry. And that affects us when it comes to atmosphere as well. So it doesn't seem to me like there's any kind of easy way of dealing with this. I do trust Vinay Venkatesham to make decisions on behalf of the fans far more than Daniel Levy will have done. But do I realistically expect them to ever do to bring the prices down? I mean, I know he brought the category down at the Dortmund game, which I think is something Daniel Levy would never have done. But then to hear that you still have to pay, 96 quid, did you say, for it anyway? ouch. So it's difficult. I don't have a season ticket at the moment. And I think realistically, unless it was a really big game and Spurs were playing some magnificent football, I would probably struggle to want to pay £96 for a ticket.
Yeah, I mean, the season ticket you mentioned there, the 1882, that's the one my friend Jack has. He went last night. He actually sold his South Stand ticket for 90 or whatever it was and went and sat down the other end, and I think he saved about 30 quid doing that. So it just makes sense. And we talk about Daniel Levy and his legacy and the ticket prices, and it has got to a silly level even last year. So I'm not a season ticket holder, I'm a member. Last year you could just get your CRN number, swap tickets, pay the people, and that's all good. This year, I've had to sign up to become a member. That's already 55 quid before I've even got anything. Then I've got to buy my ticket, so that's another, whatever it was. So I think when I went to the Bournemouth game and I bought my dad his ticket as well, I'm already like nearly 200 quid down because I've had to fork out, that extra £50, which wasn't the case last year. It just gets to a ridiculous level, and I think this is where our frustration comes, because you see that, but the money doesn't end up going back into the club. Do you think, but the way to maybe flip this question to you both, and we'll go back to you, Jamie, do you hope that with Daniel Levy maybe moving on, that it gets a bit more like, we're spending more, we're seeing more value for money as a club, and, not just being, the way I always phrase it is we're like, was it champagne taste, beer money? But hopefully we want to see, champagne football.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that I don't want to put anything on Daniel Levy. I think that people have been kind of mentioning him the last few weeks. I think it's an easy scapegoat because he literally is gone now. But I think in terms of the stadium, we can hope that with the kind of changes in that position that we can see little things like that. Maybe see us stop being as tight in the transfer window and things like that. I think we just need a bit of balance with these decisions. Like I think they even read out on White and Jordan earlier, like the statement from the Tottenham supporters group. I think it's quite fair and balanced. Like I went to most of the Europa League home games last season. One, because I wanted to go, but two, they were actually affordable and quite reasonable. Like they're not. We're not talking like put the tickets down to 15 quid, but they were not 100 quid. And I think there's that kind of sweet spot, I think, that they need to try and find more often and be more consistent with. Yeah, I think that's the issue I have with it. And I think hopefully they can find that with time.
Yeah, Barnaby, do you think there has to be a massive change? Because I think now the most expensive season ticket is Fulham. We're just under that. Maybe Spurs might be annoyed that we aren't the most expensive season ticket, because I guess Fulham, there's a swimming pool now there. There's a lovely view of the Thames. Is it just because, again, like Spurs are, they're looking to build this new hotel right ahead of the next Euros. Does it end? Does it just always going to keep going up and up and up? Or, will there be a straw that breaks the camel's back?
I think the Fulham thing is a bit of a misnomer, because I believe that is actually a private members club that ticket comes with, which is in that new stand of theirs. So that obviously is easily forgotten about when articles are taking the mick out of them. What do I think? I think that the hotel, is important to remember that that's all part of that Northumberland development project that was part of the rebuilding of the stadium that started kind of 20 odd years ago and was always in the plan. So when people slag off the hotel, it's like, no, to be fair, that's always been part of it. That's always been part of the idea for the revenue streams. That space behind the South Stand has always been there for the hotel. And actually the plan was for the hotel to already have been built by now. And if it wasn't for COVID, that would have already happened. That will bring in new revenue to the club. I don't have any problem whatsoever with the smartness of Daniel Levy in bringing so many revenue streams into the club. I don't have any issue with that at all. I'm not one of the people who says, we're not concentrating enough on the football side, because I promise you, we would be absolutely down in the doldrums if it hadn't been for that. After COVID, with the stadium build price, etc., it's really important to remember that Arsenal moved into their new stadium in 2006, and they didn't start spending money for another 13 years properly after that, until they got Ozil and then Nicola Pepe. And Spurs, because of those revenue streams, have managed to kind of cut down the amount of time until they're spending money. So that's important to remember and to give props to Daniel Levy about. But I think in terms of, the bigger picture of the ticket prices and whether we're going to see that come through into transfer spend. We've actually spent a lot of money in the transfer window since 2019. I think third or fourth on the net spend. We can't complain about that. But what I think we do need to see a difference with, and something that would, I think, stop the fan base from complaining about things like the ticket prices, is if we went into, for instance, this January window, and I don't want to step on us talking about transfers, but if we went in there with a different mindset of being like, well, we know where the gap is. We know there's a player available. We know he's also interested other clubs who are usually willing to spend more money on wages than us. Go in there straight away and say, we'll pay 10 million more than your release clause, so we can talk to him first, and we'll make him the best paid player at the club alongside Christian Romero, and say, bang, you're the player for that position. Now, that is something that would never have happened previously if, and I think it's a big if because I don't think it's going to happen, we saw that from Vinay and the Lewis family, then I think we would stop pretty quickly complaining about ticket prices.
Very well said. I think you took the words out of my mouth. And we will get onto transfers because I feel like we know the player you're talking about, who you were hinting at there. I have a small feeling who we know it is. But moving on then. Big game this weekend. Barnaby was speaking about it earlier as well. Nottingham Forest in the Premier League, obviously under Sean Dyche as well. A lot of friction between the two clubs after the Morgan Gibbs-White saga in the summer, and Evangelos Marinakis saying his famous quote that they always win, but they don't always win because I'm literally saying all this. It's going to come back to Barnaby, so I'm going to stop myself there. But Jamie, we'll start with you. How are you feeling about this? Do you think we can carry on that momentum of the previous wins?
I do actually feel good about this one. I mean, our away form is obviously better this season, so that's a positive. But yeah, it's just nice to actually have a bit of momentum going into a game, and also with Forest being a kind of slightly more defensive side now under Dyche, I think it should hopefully play into our hands. And give the players a chance to show a bit more creative output. I'd like to think they're feeling quite confident now, especially Xavi Simons, and if you've got him ticking, then hopefully we can see more going forward. I'm feeling quite good. I think Kudus is really on it as well, so those two are must starters. And I think ultimately, I think we'll get the job done.
I mean, Forest last year, we did struggle against them, I'd say, Jamie, because, under Nuno Espirito Santo. I mean, it's a shame we're not playing against Ange Postecoglou. I think that would have been a really exciting state of affairs. Probably would have scored a couple of corners as well. So do you think Sean Dyche has got them ticking in the right direction, or is it, as you say, it could play into our hands? Do you think Spurs prefer these low block teams then?
I mean, I guess who did we play last in the league? Who was it? Sorry, it was Brentford. I guess they're more like that as well, and yet I think we still found them in situations where they weren't right on their back four, and there were many times in the game where we had Simons or someone else turning and running at their defence. So I think, hopefully there's something. You were saying earlier about Romero drawing out players when he's waiting for that pass. Hopefully we can do some of that, draw Forest a little bit out their low block and take advantage. I think we have struggled against these low blocks before earlier this season, but confidence is everything in this sport. And I think there's a bit more confidence. I'd like to think we'll get the better of them.
How about you, Barnaby? How are you feeling? Obviously, you made your thoughts clear earlier about the intensity that we could see.
Yeah, like I said, I hope that fatigue really comes and plays into our hands. The things that I'm worried about as kind of a Spurs fan of, 35 years of kind of, the classic feeling of we should win this game, but will we find a way not to? I'm slightly worried about the fact that they got absolutely pulverised by Everton last week, and maybe there'll be some kind of bounce back. I kind of almost would have preferred it if they hadn't had that performance, and maybe we could have put that performance on them. But also that could work both ways. It could be that they're lacking confidence. Be interesting to see how they do in the Europa League tomorrow night. I think the first 15 minutes is going to be all important. I think it will be a good atmosphere at the City grounds. I think they kind of, Spurs have a way of making ourselves everybody's most hated club. And so now we're Nottingham Forest fans' most hated club, which is completely ridiculous because all we... I call this summer or especially 2 weeks during this summer, the Morgan Gibbs-White fortnight, where on my YouTube channel, my views were just going through the roof because Spurs fans were excited about buying this player who we all rate, and Forest fans were watching because they were so livid that we had the gall to bid a release clause amount. And I was just saying for 2 weeks in my content, well, we bid the release clause amount, so he's going to come because he wants to come, and yet Marinakis finds a way for it not to happen. So the fans are going to be up against us. If we can keep it quiet first 15 minutes, let them kind of simmer down, ideally score a goal in that first 15 minutes as well. But if we are able to get the first goal, I'm really confident we'll win the game. But if we concede first, then I fear that'll keep the crowd up, and then it might get difficult for us, because we've seen when we concede first, we do quite regularly, apart from maybe Manchester United, find it hard to break down the opposition, where what they tend to do is start throwing themselves to the ground, get in our faces, wind us up, win a load of free kicks. And we have found that difficult over the last year or two. I really hope we win this one, because I think it could make for a really exciting Christmas period if we go into it with momentum. Games come thick and fast, and there are winnable games there. Liverpool, even, not usually a game I would say is a winnable game, and they got a good result last night, but no Mo Salah. I think Cody Gakpo's injured, so it could be a winnable game there, and we could go into Christmas with some real momentum. But like I said, first 15 minutes, keep it tight. I think it would keep a clean sheet against Forest. We'll win the game.
Yeah, I want to add as well, actually,
go on, Jeremy,
if possible, that like I've been saying a lot, I think to you as well, Sonny, in the office, like football actually is like at the core, like really simple. Like the basics do come out on top. If you run the most, you're more likely going to win a game. I've actually been keeping over these stats over the last few weeks. And I mean, it's only been a couple of weeks, but if you look at the numbers, most teams that run more than the opposition have won their games. I was looking at the numbers just a minute ago, just to be sure, but we ran 10 kilometres more than Forest last week in the Premier League. These things will make a difference. And I think for the poor run that we were on just prior to these last couple of games, you know, every fan was watching the game going, they're not at it, they're not trying, they're not even putting in the effort. You can see it. Whereas I think Newcastle, Brentford last night, you're actually seeing that they're actually fighting, they're trying to compete, they're putting in the effort and the yards, and ultimately that is like it's amazing how simple football is, but that is like the difference. And I think if they just bring that again, if they're up for it, like they weren't in Chelsea and Arsenal, if they're up for it and they just really compete, I think we have the skill to beat Forest.
And I guess my final question around that game is, any changes to the starting 11, or are you happy to see it as it is? Jamie, we'll start with you.
I think there's players you want to see, and then there's a kind of a balance of rotation. I know Frank's going to be thinking about that. I think you need Simmons to be starting. You need Kudus to be starting. I'd probably play Kolo Muani. Now, I think I kind of thought he would start yesterday, but he didn't. So I assume that's kind of in his thinking. And then one of Gray or Bergvall, for me for sure has to start. Maybe you keep Gray in because he's in a good run at the moment. And just the usual back four. I think we don't have many options at left back now. Just Jed Spence, or maybe you put Archie Gray there. Ben Davies, yeah. But yeah, so for me, I think you kind of play a similar lineup to Brentford with maybe a subtle change for rotation.
What about you, Barnaby? Any changes, or are you happy to keep it the same?
I think that Thomas Frank has shown in his substitutions yesterday, and in the knowledge that there's no midweek game next week because it's EFL Cup next week, that I think he will stick to a similar team there or thereabouts that won at the weekend. I think he'll stick with Kolo Muani and Richarlison playing with one or the other playing as the left-sided forward and the other playing as the 9, Kudus. I think Simons will play, and I think it'll be Archie Gray and Rodrigo Bentancur will come in. And Jed Spence on as left back, and then all the rest as you'd expect. And I think that's the team that probably gives us our best chance of winning. I think the only slight one he'll be thinking about is, does he bring Odebear in and maybe play Kolo Muani instead of Richarlison? Richarlison's played a lot of games, but obviously he's on a scoring run, and we know Rishi's a streaky player. And when he's on a streak, try and maximise it, because you know he's going to pull his hamstring soon.
Well, speaking of injuries, actually, and replacements potentially, that brings me on to my final question then. The January transfer window, we've actually been asking quite a few of our guests recently what you think we need to do in the January transfer window. Now, we could go for another hour talking about this, but we've got to keep it clear and concise. So, Barnaby, you were already hinting at some transfers. Who do you want to see come in January?
Well, obviously who I was alluding to earlier was Semenyo. I mean, that's what I would love to happen. I think that's what I said earlier is the way that I think it can happen. Do I think it'll happen? I would say probably not. I think it would be a lovely surprise if it did. But I actually think almost equally as much as what we need in terms of needing a left-sided forward, what we really need is a left-back. Udogie's injury and kind of constant inability to stay fit for more than 4 or 5 games in a row means we need backup there. I know Ben Davies came on last night. He got a great reaction. It was great to see him. He brings balance, but I think at best he's a squad player. I think now, and I have seen some rumours around of some players we're interested in, but I think now what we really need is a left back who can press Destiny Udogie for that first team place and allow Jed Spence to become the rotation right back and take some minutes off Pedro Porro. I think that's the first and foremost. Probably the left-sided forward second, although we have many options there, you know, and I think Matisse Tell is coming on, and I like how Odebear's doing. So I'd say if we can't get Semenyo, I wouldn't risk it for someone else who's going to be a potential. Do you know what I mean? I think we've got potential. Unless we can get someone in that left-sided forward position who can go in straight away and really make a change to that first team, I probably wouldn't risk it. And then a centre midfielder ideally, and maybe it's unlikely to come this January, so more likely in the summer, but a ball-playing, progressive passing central midfielder, and Adam Wharton, if you like, if Adam Wharton wasn't realistically going to go somewhere for £100 million. But again, if the Lewis family want to show us that they really do mean business and that the communication that they've been talking about wanting to win trophies isn't just all talk, then you go out and you spend the money and you buy an Adam Wharton and you buy an Antoine Semenyo, and then we'll all get behind you and we'll pay whatever it costs.
Yeah, I mean, Adam Wharton, again, the dream. Carlos Baleba, the dream. A lot of rumours. I mean, there has been linked to Real Madrid. There's been an Angelo Stiller rumour circulating, which, I mean, he'd be amazing. But as I say, Real Madrid will probably end up scooping him up. One that I'd like to ask your opinion about, Barnaby. It's a very quiet rumour at the moment, but, you know, it's out there in the ether, so we have to talk about it. Marcus Rashford, what do you reckon, yes or no?
I'd be hugely surprised if Marcus Rashford became a Tottenham Hotspur player. I thought if Tottenham were interested in Marcus Rashford, they would have tried to get him when Villa got him on loan. Obviously, he's always wanted this Barcelona move. Marcus Rashford's on 300 grand a week, and the reality is, you know, no matter what you say about these top-level footballers, they do not want to take a huge pay cut. I think maybe he'd be willing to take a pay cut to stay at Barcelona. Listen, do I like Marcus Rashford as a player? Absolutely. Really talented. Underrated, I think, as a wide forward, and he's a great finisher, but I just don't see him in that Spurs shirt. I bought him numerous times on Football Manager for Spurs. He always does well. But do I think, unfortunately, in real life, he's going to be a Tottenham player? I don't. But, you know, I think Rashford's agent is probably rightly suggesting different options at the moment.
Even to me, do you think we actually need an out-and-out forward? You know, Dominic Solanke's injury doesn't seem to be clearing up. Richarlison, as you say, streaky player. Kolo Muani is a straight loan. Will that be made a permanent? There's not many out-and-out strikers available in the market, but is that an area we could look to strengthen in?
Not unless there are options. For me, if I was going to strengthen that area, I'd be making that Kolo Muani deal permanent, because he can play in the 9 and wide forward, and he's really impressed me. He holds it up. He runs the channels, and I think he's a better finisher than he's shown us so far. I think he'll score. I'd be surprised if he didn't score, if he stays fit, 10 Premier League goals in the second half of the season as well. So that's where that money would be going. Right,
that's all we've got time for on Inside Spurs. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Barnaby and Jamie. And, you know, if you're new around here, get down below, like the video, subscribe to the talkSPORT YouTube channel, get your comments in. I love a good debate in the comment section. But yeah, until next time, up the Spurs, and see you guys soon. Bye.